Hello, everyone. Today I want to talk about two topics that are very near and dear to my heart, and that is technical debt and refactoring. So, if you're not familiar with the term, let me lay some vocabulary down first. So, technical debt is essentially, it could be a lot of things, but it's like code that needs to be improved. Like maybe it's not very well written, and you know it's not very well written, and so it's debt that has been incurred in the past, and you kind of have to pay it down eventually, just like you would normal debt, right? If you let it get out of hand, eventually your project becomes a nightmare to work in. And then of course refactoring. I'm sure anybody watching this knows what refactoring is, but it's that process of actually cleaning up code, like changing it to try to make it better. And so I think it's important to note that technical debt, it's not exactly the worst thing in the world. There are times when it's a necessary evil. You might be working in a company that has like a legal deadline to have some work completed, right? And you just have to cut some corners and make the code not quite as well as you wanted to because you have to meet those deadlines. Or it could be like a business deadline, like maybe there's a big event happening and your company's got like a commercial in the event, and so you have to get the work done, right? So you have to make it happen, and it really doesn't, like, the quality matters still, but corners have to be cut sometimes. So like I said, it's a necessary evil. I don't look at it as necessarily a bad thing. I think pretty much every project is going to have some layer of tech debt, some a lot more than others. But to me, it's just an opportunity to improve and refactor. And I love the process of refactoring. To me, it's really fun. So I enjoy it. In general, if you have the time, you should just keep the code clean as you go. Like, don't ever commit the tech debt. Just, you write the code, you look at it and think about how it could be better, and you change it. And then you think about how it can still be better, and you change it until eventually you're happy with it and you commit it. I will say, some things that I like to do is when I have to add tech debt to a code base, or even if I just find tech debt that I didn't know about, I like to make sure I document that. If your company uses, let's say, like Azure DevOps or TFS or Jira or whatever you use, like create like a story to clean up that tech debt sometime soon. Like, so it's documented, and you guys as a team can prioritize and get that stuff cleaned up, and try to clean up stuff as soon as possible, right? Like if you do have to incur some debt because of some kind of a hard deadline, then make sure it's in the roadmap to get that cleaned up after the deadline has passed, so that you're not letting that debt pile up and become a little bit more unmanageable in the future. All right, so enough talking. A lot of my couple last videos, I guess, have been quite a bit of talking, so I just want to do a little bit of code today, and just kind of simulate a real refactoring session of what I would do. So hopefully, those of you that don't really feel comfortable with refactoring, or really don't understand the need for it, hopefully this will show you a couple cool things. This is going to be using Angular, and I'm going to be utilizing some RxJS. So if you're not familiar with those topics, you might not be able to follow 100%, but I'll try to keep it in like layman terms for everybody to understand. So what we have here essentially is a service. This service has a method called getPost, and getPost returns an observable post. So my HTML wants to be able to show the post title and body. So I have this post member variable in my component, and that's the post that I want to show. So in my onInit function, I am subscribing to that observable to set the post. And now because I've subscribed to the observable, you should always unsubscribe from an observable so that you don't have like memory leaks or leave that subscription open when you shouldn't. So this works, and this isn't really that bad. I'm not necessarily saying this is technical debt, but there are ways that I would clean this up. The first thing that I would do is say, in the future, let's say we wanted to add something else that needed a subscription. I don't have any good examples, but you needed another subscription. And so now you have to have two unsubscribes. You have to have this post subscription unsubscribe and this another subscription unsubscribe. And it's just, it could be a little bit better, right? So one of the things that I like to do when I do need subscriptions is to just create a subscriptions array and have the array hold all of my subscriptions. So I'm going to clean this up and change this. Actually, let's set the variable so that we don't have to initialize it. So it's now an empty array. And then I can just change this to push instead of setting it equal to that. And I think we need another parentheses now. There we go. And now down here, I can say subscriptions for each subscription. This, or no, just subscription, unsubscribe. Okay, there we go. So I refactored the code, and I now feel like it scales a little bit better, right? Like if I add more subscriptions in the future, I don't have to even touch this line of code. This code will just always work. It's kind of like open close principle, not exactly. But if I have to add something new, I don't have to go touch the old code so much. So this is definitely an improvement. And by the way, let me make note when it comes to refactoring, like unit tests are very important. You need to have unit tests for your work to ensure that everything works. That way, when you refactor, you can run the tests and see that you didn't break it. It still works. So when I'm writing code, unit test is always one of the first things I do. You can go as far as to write the tests before the code. That's test-driven development, TDD. That's not 100% necessary, although it can be valuable to do to help you just write better code that's easier to test. But yeah, the earlier you write those tests, the better. And the higher you can get the coverage, the better, so that you can constantly be running those tests and making sure you're not breaking anything. In this case, I'm not going to run tests just because that's kind of like beyond the scope of what I wanted to show today. But let's keep going with the refactoring now. So I've made it a little bit better, but I've still got a problem here. I don't like having to manage these subscriptions. It's just, to me, it's like unnecessary fluff code, and like there's ways that to refactor this code where I don't even need a subscription. So I want to take advantage of Angular's async pipe, and I want to use that so that Angular can handle the subscription and the unsubscription for me automatically without me having to do it. So let me start working towards that change. So we're not going to need a subscription, and we're not going to need a non-destroy function. So let's just go ahead and knock that out to get rid of it. All right, looking better already. I'm going to leave this here and go ahead and I know I'm going to need observable, so I'm going to go ahead and import it. So I want to change post to an observable. So now post $ is typically how you indicate that something's an observable. So post observable, and then I'm going to change my on-init function. I don't even think you need to do this in an on-init function. I'm pretty sure because I'm not going to have any other logic, I could just do this in the constructor. Let's just do it that way. I normally never do this. I usually always do it in the on-init function. But let's just go ahead and get rid of that too and see if it works. Less code the better, in my opinion. And now we're just going to set this.post equal to this.service.getPost. So now when the component gets initialized and created, you'll have this post equal to this service get post, so the observable. And I know Angular's mad at me now because this doesn't work anymore. So we just have to use the async pipe. So we're going to say post async as post. All right, and there we go. So we've now refactored the code, and now I feel a lot better about it. There is one weird thing that kind of bothers me about Angular. The fact that you have to do stuff like this. Like, it kind of feels like, what if you just made the service public and then just used service.getPost in your component? Well, Angular does not like when you do that. It will cause the site to basically continue to load infinitely, like never stop. I've read on why that happens. I can't really I don't know. I can't really remember why that happens. I have read about it. Don't understand it completely. It's something to do with just how complicated observables are and stuff like that. But Yeah, so this, to me, this is about as clean as this code can get. There's not really much else that I can do. Now, Angular with the async pipe is taking control of the subscription and the unsubscription for me, and I don't have to do anything else. So that's just a quick example of how we kind of iterated through having the subscription hard-coded to a specific variable, and then having a refactoring that, and now having a subscription array, and then deciding to refactor that and just completely get rid of the subscriptions altogether. So I don't know. This is fun to me. This is what I love to do. I love to refactor code, and I love writing tests and being able to change the code and make sure the tests still pass. Something about it to me is just fun and exciting. So I recommend that people just kind of get used to it, get into the habit of always refactoring your code. One of the worst things that I see on teams today is when people build stuff, and as soon as it works, it's like they're hands off. They stop touching it. You know, it took me all day to get this working. I'm not touching it. And to me, once I get something working, like that's just the starting point. That's when I write my tests, and that's when I start thinking about how I can refactor it and make it better and simplifying it as much as I can. Like it reminds me of like in class, right? When you have math problems and you're trying to simplify them, right? Make them easier to understand and use the smallest numbers possible. It's the same kind of thing, but with code. You know, you want the code to be easy to read, easy to understand, easy to follow, be as short and simple as possible without being like, you know, too much of like a cipher, right? Like you don't want to use like one letter variables trying to save code space, because a $P doesn't mean anything to anybody, but post $ certainly does. So anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you found this at least a little valuable. If you're liking the content, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And that's all. Thank you for watching.